Hello, welcome to Like It Is, and our continuation of our series with three eminent historians about African history and its impact on our lives. Our guests are Professor Ivan van Sertima of Rutgers University, Professor Yosef ben Jochannan of Cornell University, and Professor John Henry Clark of Hunter College. Our historic excavations will begin or continue right after these words.
At a time when Europe at its very best could not produce a machine with a temperature blast in the blast furnaces of more than 1600 degrees centigrade, they found in that area where they were producing steel that there were higher population densities than there are today. Tanzania, in fact, supported comfortably certain population densities which it cannot support today. One of the things that we do not seem to understand is that colonialism in some places actually destroyed African soil. Machines were introduced that were totally inappropriate to that world and that destroyed possibilities. In Tanzania, for example, you find 4.5 million heads of cattle in the interior of Tanzania. Within a matter of a century after colonialism, all that cattle disappeared, and things were introduced that were not in Tanzania at the time, or did not take on epidemic proportions. Rinderpest, smallpox, jigger fleas, all these things were introduced under the colonial period. It is usually assumed that these diseases just took over as a result of the backwardness of Africans.
And all of these help to undermine the strength of Africa, you're saying?
Yes, and you find, for example, in Kenya, they found an astronomical observatory 300 years before Christ. On the basis of the alignments of the stones of that observatory, they found Africans had built one of the world's most accurate prehistoric calendars. They found very complex astronomy among the West Africans. In the last program, for example, Professor Ben had been pointing out reasons for the decline and fall of the Egyptian civilization. One of the things that must be noted is that after that fall, Africa rose again in other places. That Mali Empire, for example, in the 13th and 14th centuries was quite extraordinary. The Dogon, a people among in the Mali Empire, plotted an invisible star, a white dwarf, which we, when I say we, I mean modern astronomy, only became aware of in the 20th century. They not only plotted its orbit and trajectory up to 1990. We have found that our best machines produce the same chart that they produced several centuries ago.
Where is the evidence that they did plot this invisible star?
Well, Griot and Deitlin, two anthropologists, studied the Dogon and found after 16 years what an extraordinary knowledge they had of our, not only of our planet, but of star systems and our galaxy. They pointed out, for example, that this star which they plotted, and I have looked through a powerful telescope, I could not see it, even with that powerful telescope, because even with our best telescopes, it is only visible at certain times. They know.
So mathematics must also
the mathematics was involved as well as telescopes. The Russians discovered in ancient Africa finely ground spherical crystal lenses. In the excavations they found this, and they have indicated.
Where
this was found in Egypt. This was found on Anas's time, and they have indicated that the Africans were capable of making telescopes. The Dogon kept up a caravan trade with Egypt even after its decline, and could have got this knowledge and refined in it afterwards.
So what we have is a story of an African people that had developed a high technology, but their humanity was such that...
No, I don't think it's a question of humanity. I do not believe in theories of people being more human than others. I do believe, however, and the evidence bears us out, that whereas the Africans had the opportunities to destroy European civilizations whenever they invaded Europe, where it was under the Grimaldis before the emergence of Cro-Magnon man, where it was under the Moors, when with other peoples they were in Egypt, they were in Europe, where it was under Hannibal, when even Taharqa made an excursion into a part of Europe, they found them in Spain. The European profited in all the circumstances. Never was his civilization shattered. Whereas when the Europeans invaded, they wiped out cultures. And that is a very odd
yet
thing.
that speaks not of humanity, you say?
It speaks of very extraordinary circumstances, how this can be translated in terms of whether you have different kinds of human beings or different type of human consciousness or different human character, perhaps in terms of the social character of the African. You see, the African never believed that, for example, if he has a religion and he conquers another person or walks into another territory, he has to plaster it down on them. The times when these invasions were made, it was times when Europe thought, or at least she liked to think, in order to cover up, to assuage her guilty conscience, that she could say, well, look, I've come on the name of Christ and the name of God to save these souls, so that she, therefore, found it necessary to wipe out everything. Like, for example, in America, she destroyed all the books in America except 3.
Well, did the African ever do that?
They never did that
Europe?
because...
Did the African ever enslave the European?
No. No, you don't have evidence of that. And this is not only a question of humanity. It has to do, as I say, with the assumption with which you move forward, that what are you doing? The African, for example, did not have these monolithic religions where you would go like the Arab or the Christians, the European Christians, when they distorted Christianity, would go and say, in the name of such and such, I'm going to wipe you out. I don't think the African invader ever operated under those premises, so that you can have a totally different kind of impact occurring.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the vast resources on the African continent and how they were exploited and utilized by the African.
Well, they have found, for example, in medicine, extraordinary things occurring in African medicine. I'm not just talking about the witch doctor. In the Edinburgh Journal, for example, they noted the Africans were the first in cesarean operations. They have a picture of it in my recent Journal of African Civilizations, that they had invented a vaccine for smallpox before the Europeans, that they were using tetracycline consciously before the Europeans, that they were the first people to have standardized medicinal doses in Egypt, a socialized medicine.
I thought tetracycline was a relatively modern drug.
No, 14 centuries ago, they have found Africans using the tetracycline. They found the yellow-green flash in their bones. And they found where they were using that tetracycline, there's the lowest incidence of infectious disease in an ancient population.
Do they know how it was administered?
No, they found it first in their grain bin, so that it may have started as an accident, but then the Africans became aware of it and started to use it in medicinal doses. We also have evidence of mathematical systems, and this is one of the things that one finds so frustrating, that in most of the anthropological and archaeological records, or anthropological and historical records, you do not there's no mention of African mathematical systems. Work has been done showing that these mathematical systems were highly complex, particularly among the people like the Yoruba, etc., and some of them were on the verge of computers before the Holocaust. And you wonder why are these things not mentioned. The reason why they're not mentioned is that most of the studies of Africans were done in small communities, survivor communities. Studies at the core and centers of major African civilization, few of these have been done, and even when done, they haven't been done in terms of technology, because it was assumed that they did not have a technology. Their resources are incredible. South Africa has still retained control, and in that sense, Africa has only gained a paper independence. South Africa controls the world's diamonds, the world's gold. 23 million ounces of gold are produced in South Africa a year. Zimbabwe and Ghana has only 1 million. The diamonds among the South Africans, they are the leading diamond producers in the world. Manganese, it's incredible. They have 5 million tons of manganese against 2 million in any other African, in Gabon, African.
Perhaps therein lies the reason why the West is so in support of the racist regime that controls South Africa
yes,
today.
There is a tremendous reappraisal recently done in the Reagan administration as to whether they stand to profit by having this kind of relationship. And very often, when resources are found, like Gabon, they found it has 1 billion tons of fine iron ore. United Nations sat as whether it should allow the Gabonese to have money to build a railroad to the sea, 400 miles to the sea, to exploit this. They abandoned